Welcome everyone to this episode of the Tiny Fit Diva podcast. I'm your host, Kylene Terhune, functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. With this podcast, it's my hope to bring you a lot of experts in different areas of health and wellness. And one of the pillars I think to ultimate health and wellness is really finding your purpose and living a less stressful life and a happy life. And so I'm really excited for today's guest because I think he's going to bring a really unique perspective to the podcast today. So I'd like to introduce you to Matt Gersper. Matt Gersper is an author, motivational speaker, and entrepreneur. He is the founder of Happy Living, a health and wellness media and book publishing company. He is the author of Turning Inspiration into Action, The Belief Roadmap, and Inspiring Women. Previously, Matt spent 30 years helping businesses in retail, accounts payable, international trade compliance, and he specialized in business process optimization and best practice development. Matt held roles responsible for starting, growing, and leading successful businesses, including Vice President of Strategic Auditing, the founding entrepreneur of a startup, President and Chairman of the Board. So welcome, Matt. I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
And I didn't mention he has his own podcast as well called Something Significant. So go check that out. When you're done listening to this episode, he interviews a lot of really cool people.
Including you. I think yours goes on next Monday.
I'm so excited to hear it. That was such a fun interview. I can't wait. But yeah, that you have some really great guests on there. I bet that's been a really fun experience.
It's been really fun. And we're actually thinking about changing the name. Not so much the topic. We'll cover the same topic of significance, doing work you love, and that also provides value to others. Mm-hmm. But couching it in around happiness. And we're testing the idea of the happy hour with Matt Gersper.
I love it. So does that mean that everyone, when they're being interviewed, gets to drink dry farm wines?
I think that's a good idea.
I'll
have to talk to Todd about it.
Yes, I can't. Oh, I think it's called Off the Vine. There's a podcast, and there's a gal that was, I think she was on The Bachelor or The Bachelorette or something. Anyway, she's got a good bouncy personality, and she has her own podcast, and I believe it's called Off the Vine. And I think they sit there and drink wine and talk.
That's funny. Very funny.
So I feel like that would be very successful for you. So you did not start out with this dream of owning happy living. You started out as a football player, and then from there you really went into business, and from all accounts and all perspectives, you would have been considered a very successful businessman. And then there's a big shift in your life, and you are where you are now. So can you share a little bit about that history? What in the world brought you to this place?
Yes, and unfortunately, phone's ringing. Let me turn that off. So the last company that I was involved in, it was an international trade business, and it doesn't matter what we did. We were a very, very niche company in data management for large multinationals. So any company you can think of that buys and sells products across international borders, most of them were our customers. And it was a really great business. We bought part of it in 2004, and then I created a startup that was kind of like a sister company, very synergetic company, and we worked them together for 10 years. In year 7, we merged them, and then in year 8, we restructured the company, and I was maybe 8 or 9. I was moving into the chairmanship, so out of operations into the chairmanship. Very cool, because it was another function that I hadn't played yet. Plus I got to say I was the chairman. That's pretty cool too. And the idea was, I was still working at the time trying to get we didn't have a chief financial officer. So I was kind of charged with getting the financial house in order. And then I was going to step out into the chairmanship, which would have been supposed to be oversight. I envisioned myself working about 1/5 of the time in the company, and I was starting to think about, what do I want to do next? So that was really that thought process of what's next is started from that. To end the business story, we ended up selling the company against my wishes. I write about it in my book. There's lots of reasons, but we were making money hand over fist. And it was a subscription model. So as long as we did our job right, we made more money every year. It was just fantastic. But anyways, I was the largest shareholder, but I didn't have more than 50% of the voting. I had only like 37%, something like that. And I got outvoted. So fortunately, I had already started thinking about the next step. This just kind of accelerated it for me. And the catalyst was several things. A big hike, my second annual hike down the Grand Canyon to stay at an awesome place called the Phantom Ranch, which is way down at the bottom of the canyon, and then climb out the next day. And usually when I go out on those hikes, I would take with me an issue that I'm working on. Maybe I don't have an answer to a business problem or whatever. In this case, what I took down with me was, what do I want to do next? And I was reading a book called Halftime about people getting in middle age. I was 53 at the time, 52 at the time. And I had just come from a business meeting with a friend in Portland who he and I and my son went out to dinner. And Kevin must have said a dozen times, you know, Kyle, my son's name, your dad and my glory days are behind us. And I was thinking about that. My glory days were not behind me. I felt like I was just getting ramped up, just getting started. And so on the way down the mountain, I was reading this book about second half of life. He basically chronicles two people, the kind that they do a slow death through retirement until they die, boring, their end of their life, basically. And then the other kind discovers that thing that lit them up in their youth, that their purpose, the thing they love to do. Maybe it's playing music, maybe it's being a member of the bridge team, whatever it is. So I had those two things swimming in my brain about, why do I think differently than my friend? And how could I help others, think the way I think, which is that every day, every tomorrow, there's something I can do better than I could do today, every day. And that was the case when I was 10 and 20, and the case when I'm 50 and 60, and that'll be the case if I live to be 100. There's always something I can do. And when I'm engaged in that self-improvement, it's very uplifting. And so that was the catalyst for happy living. And the other thing was, I really wanted to figure out, you mentioned I was involved in best practice development, and really that's just tapping into the collective intelligence of a community and then organizing that. It's really all it is. And that ended up being in software. But I wanted to think of, could I do that with health and wellness? And could I do that from a perspective, a personal perspective that wasn't selfish, but was giving? And so for the first half of my life, I did a lot of nice things, but they were always selfish, if I'm honest about it. There was always that this will propel my career, this will help my company, this will do A, B, and C that will reflect back on me, so therefore I'm going to do it. And I'm on an experiment now to see if I can unlearn that, and if I can actually, truly, and honestly just give. And it's maybe my toughest task yet, but I'm working on it.
That's like going against human nature. So that's tough. Yeah. To be 100%.
So that's a long-winded version. I could go longer, but that'll give you the idea of how we got it started. And it was really kind of by accident, but also not at all by accident. It's kind of like, because I was shaped to do this, I think. So.
Right. Yeah. So how did health get involved in this? I might be wrong, but it was my understanding that you used to not be as health driven and focused as you are now. So how did that not only change in your personal life, but then that became like a priority with your business as well?
Yeah, I was, as an athlete, I was always interested in fitness. So I've been fit my whole life. I've exercised my whole life. When I was no longer an athlete, I stayed, I basically work out every day, and that's just a part of who I am. Mm-hmm. Diet and sleep and everything else besides physical fitness, right, I really didn't pay much attention to. And for example, my diet was, as long as my weight was held in check, I'm free to do whatever I wanted. Didn't make any difference. And I had no idea what I was putting into my body. And I didn't really suffer many health consequences from it, or so I thought. But I ended up, with a like chronic gut pain, probably for the last 15, 20 years of my life. It's just like something I lived with and just thought, it's just natural. Of course, it's not natural. We know that. And I know that now. But my wife was, for one reason or another, I got the book Grain Brain. And I read that. My wife, I think she saw it, or I don't know why I read it, but I read the book, and it's a great book. I really recommend it to anybody. It's a fascinating read. And it taught me that the food that we're eating is not what we think it is. It's not really food. And for the longest time, Kylene,
food, is that what
I think it maybe. But anyways, I think I read Wheat Belly first and then Grain Brain. But anyways, similar stories. Yep. And I think Wheat Belly called it Frankenfood.
I think you're right.
But anyways, it's processed food is made in a laboratory. And for the longest time, I didn't know when people talked about processed food and real food, I didn't understand what they were even saying. It was all real food to me, but it's not. And so anyway, I was moved by these books, and it was before Happy Living got started. And I went on a wheat-free, diet, which I didn't think was gonna be a big deal for me. I've never been a foodie. But when I realized that I couldn't drink beer, it was like, oh, my head about exploded. I said, okay, fine. So I'll try it. I did it for like 3 days or I did it for a week, I think. And what happened is my sniffles went away. My gut pain went away. Things changed.
Yeah. Fast.
And so,
isn't that what's so
and fast.
How fast people can see results from that. Yeah.
Yeah. And fast. And so, that was a catalyst for me starting. Plus I was older, so and I believe in constant improvement. So it wasn't a stretch for me to try to learn about my diet. But that was really the catalyst for it. And then the Happy Living thing came up, and I was trying to think you're an entrepreneur, and I know from a long history in business that to be successful, an entrepreneur has to have a niche. And the tighter the niche, they say, the better. And my big old idea of happy living was improving the health and well-being of the world, one person at a time. And that's against every, business book you could ever read. So I realized that was a problem. I was thinking, well, how can I confine myself to the things that I want to learn about, I want to teach about, I want to share with the world? And I came up with what I call our 7 foundations of health. And it's a pyramid with 7 blocks, 4 blocks on the bottom, 2 blocks in the middle, and 1 block on top. And the 4 blocks on the bottom we call the 4 fitnesses. It's physical fitness, which is exercise and diet and for the body, physical fitness, mental fitness, spiritual fitness, and financial fitness. And throwing in finance changed my company from almost all of them out there. And the reason we have the 4 fitnesses, and yours don't need to be exactly like mine are, but to have a fulfilling, full life, you have to build enough capacity as a human being to take care of yourself in a good way, and, in my opinion, to give something of value, to give to others. And giving to others might be raising your family. That's giving to others, right? So if I've got 4 kids, in order to raise my children, I have to have more to give. And you can take it to, if I can make lots and lots of money, I can give lots and lots more. So it's all about building capacity. The 2 middle blocks, they didn't start out this way, but what they've evolved into, the purpose of them is self-discovery. It's finding that thing that really lights you up. And we describe those two categories as love and adventure. And love is more than romantic love. That's important. One of my chapters in my book, Turn Inspiration to Action, is about how I found my one true love on eHarmony. It's great.
I love it.
Anyways, so that's important. But love is really doing things you love with people you love in places you love. And adventure is about getting out of yourself, getting in a different environment from your day-to-day, because when you're doing those things, love and adventurous things, that's when I think your mind relaxes and your body gets receptive to what's out there in the universe, and where you see something and it clicks. And maybe you're at a restaurant and a band's playing in the back, and you have this burst of energy that, God, I loved it when I was playing the guitar, or whatever it is, whatever it strikes you, that's inspirational. I think when you're in those love and adventurous things, for me, my history, that's when those things have happened. An adventure could be reading a book. Adventure could be listening to a podcast. It can be all kinds of things. It's when you're outside of your regular mind and you're engaged doing something that takes your attention, right? And then the top is, I think, the magic elixir of life. We call it significance, and it is doing work that you love. Because when you do work that you love, first of all, it's not work, and second of all, you'll do it forever. And I guess my biggest role model for doing work you love that provides value to others, that's the second component of it. It's B.B. King, the great jazz guitar player, right? He played guitar every single day of his life until the day he died.
Wow.
And I've been thinking about him, and also who's in the news a lot is Elon Musk, right? The brilliant entrepreneur. Well, I don't know if you've seen Elon. First of all, I think he's a pretty good weed smoker, which apparently is maybe healthy these days. I'm not quite sure how all that goes. And no judgments. But he's also not very physically fit.
Right.
Well, there's a reason. All he does is work, right? That's all he does is work. And so I'm starting
there was a big thing in the news recently about, he was going back and forth with someone about sleep, and he doesn't have time for that. And yeah.
Right. So I think that it's not really that you need to be even healthy. I think the key is to really be engaged. And for me, that includes physical fitness, and that's important to me. But to B.B. King, it wasn't important. And he lived to be he lived a nice long life, and he entertained people. He made people feel good most of his life, from what I can tell. I'm not a big student of B.B. King, but he's an image for me that's changing how I think people need to live to be happy. I said that wrong. You don't need to live anyway for me. But in order to find true happiness, it really is, it's inside you. It's not what somebody else tells you. So anyways, those are our foundations of health. We're thinking about changing them to the foundations of happy. That might be our rebranding. Following this line of thinking that I'm just sharing with you. It's really what turns you on. And if you can find that, and you can figure out how to do that in your life and survive with that, and also create value to others, it doesn't matter if you're underweight, overweight, eating the right food, because that's when your spirit kicks in.
Right.
I was just doing my podcast. I just did an interview this morning with a doctor who suffered bipolar and really bad health issues. And she was talking about, yes, nutrition and health and that's important, but the spirit is also important. Spirit's real. And if your spirit is strong enough, it can overcome a lot of things that our physical body endures.
Oh, 100%. Was that Dr. Christina?
Yes.
Oh, she's amazing.
She's amazing.
I just interviewed her as well, and she's just, I can't wait for that podcast to come out. So inspirational, which is just perfect for your audience. But I can't agree more. Like, if people are not kind of tapping into that aspect of it, at the top of your pyramid, that inspiration, and they're very unhappy with their lives, or they're very bitter people, or they're very angry, or they're holding guilt, or they have like emotional trauma. I mean, there's all these things that can really hinder our ability. And it goes the other way too. You have these people, like exactly like what you're saying. They're not like this picture of health in terms of nutrition and fitness and all this kind of stuff. They're like the happiest people in the world, and they live to be 100 years old.
Right.
They're just happy with everything, right? And there's no stress in their lives. And
smoke cigarettes, drinking vodka.
You interview these people that are like 120, and they're like, what's your secret? And they're like, I took a shot every night before bed. Whatever it was.
Yep.
But there's so much that can be countered by whatever it is that, is less stressful for you. So for that person, that glass of wine before bed or whatever, if that was 100% like this happy thing for them, it can counteract so many of the negative effects.
Yeah,
so,
I think that's true.
That you have that. Yeah. So you had mentioned one of your motivations, and I guess it's been a motivation for you for most of your life, was your quote that every tomorrow there's something you can do better than today. So is that something your family instilled in you, or was that sort of just you just always remember feeling like I can do better, I want to do more?
So my mom and dad, I was a little tiny kid always. I'm no longer. I grew up to be about almost pushing on 6'3". But I was always a really undersized kid, and I love sports, and I wanted to play football, and I wanted to play professional football. And I showed up at I didn't just show up my first year in high school to try out for the freshman team. I trained all summer. I mean, I worked out hard so I could make the team. My parents had always told me and taught me to believe that I could do anything. I could do and become anything I wanted to be if I was willing to work hard enough for it.
That second part.
Yes, you have to work. And I worked my ass off for football. I really did. I didn't know very many people had outworked me because I had to. They were bigger and stronger and faster than me. So if I wanted to be on the field, I had to work harder. That's just the way I approached it. And I think it was, if I had to say why do I have that thought? Because I did that. Because, I ended up being the captain of the football team my senior year. And I ended up going to college, and I went to a Division II college, which I didn't want to go to because my ego was just ginormous, which is why I'm trying to unwind it this second half of my life. And I always thought, I've heard people that like me went through college, and I had 3 tryouts with the pros over 2 years, so I was working to try to become a professional football player. And I've talked with other friends of mine who had the same thing, and they said, I never quite felt like I was able to make it. I felt, and did you feel that way? I said, hell no, I thought I belonged there.
Oh, that's funny.
So I've always had, this, maybe some would say, an unrealistic confidence. But I wouldn't say that. I would just say, it helped me to work hard. And I believe it, and I've lived it. So I know that today I'm learning things. I'm teaching myself how to be a podcaster. I'm learning. I'm getting into. You saw the little video trailer I made. Well, I'm learning how to do. I'm doing that.
Are you doing all this?
I'm doing that production, and it's great because we have a copyright guy who's awesome. He is the author of our 7th book that we're just publishing now, and he is just a magician with words. And my son has this big, great radio voice. So my son's now doing the audio, and I'm doing the video. And so it's a brand new skill, and it's something that, last year I didn't know how to do.
Yeah.
So there's always something. And when you are engaged in that, I wake up in the morning, and it's like, how am I going to add this to the video? And, it's exciting.
Yeah.
So to me, that's how you live a happy life, is you keep growing in things that you love to do that provide value to others.
So how, you had mentioned earlier, finding that thing that you love, that is adventurous, that really sparks you to that younger self. So what are some ways that you encourage people, if they're stuck, like they have no idea what that is for them, they're working in a cubicle and they're like, man, I wish I had that. What are some things that maybe you would say to help discover that?
It's a great question, and I do have an answer for it. My 2nd book is all about it.
Okay. Oh, the Belief Roadmap.
No, the Turning Inspiration to Action.
Okay.
Is all about this issue of being inspired. So the person in the cubicle isn't uninspired. He or she does have thoughts that I'd like to do this, I'd like to do that. They are feeling inspired about something, if they're being honest, if they're engaged in the world at all. Maybe their inspiration is, I'd like to not be in this cubicle, I'd like to be running this company, right? I'm smarter than that CEO. So there's something there. And then from that inspiration, the strong force of gravity holds their life in place and prevents them from taking any action. And that gravity is, think of it as all the things that you say, I want to start, name it, a charity. I want to start a charitable foundation because I was so moved from the hurricanes that happened. I saw a chef that's out there has a whole second business doing nothing but responding to hurricanes.
Wow.
Awesome. So I have this inspiration that I want to do this thing. And then, as you said, I never take action. I don't discover it. So what I had learned in writing that book is that if you look at big transformations in life, oftentimes they come from some devastating thing that happens to you or to somebody you care about, right? A sick child, or like in Dr. Chris's situation, she tried to kill herself, and that was the start of the change in her life. So devastation happens, and devastation is it gets you so raw. If it doesn't kill you, you come out from it and you're so strong and so focused on doing this thing that you overwhelm the force of gravity. The gravity's still there, the things you worry about or the cultural expectations, but you say, I don't care. I met a lady that started her charity called Cheyenne's Champions for Children. Well, her daughter had been diagnosed with a disease that nobody knew what it was. They couldn't figure it out. She, for a full year, as like a 1-year-old, she didn't gain a pound, not an ounce.
Wow.
The mom, Talia, was scared to death. And from that devastation, she's doing things that she never, ever could have imagined she would have the strength to do. And she's built this great big charity, and she's changing lives of people. So devastation works, but devastation's awful. Who wants to rely on devastation to change your life? And I was thinking, I haven't done that. I've really made changes, and I write about my personal changes using inspiration. And what I discovered when I was looking backwards on my life and coming up with the book, I discovered this process that it's 3 simple questions that invoke 3 powers that make you more powerful than the force of gravity holding your life in place, and your life takes off. And so the good news is you don't have to worry about your gravity. I don't have to worry about fixing my worrisome nature. I just need to become more powerful, like Michael Jordan flying through the air. The force of gravity didn't seem to apply to him, but he was just stronger than other people. So the questions are, what inspires you? Why is it important to you? And how will you bring it into your life? And when you ask, so the first job of that person in the cubicle is to pay attention to what inspires you. Look for it. And when you see it, take note of it. Make a note of it in your smartphone. Write it down. Keep it and say, you know what? I saw this guy singing country western music, and I don't know what it was, but I was really attracted to that or inspired by that. I don't know why, and don't ask why yet. Just keep note of it. And don't judge it. Don't say, I can't be the CEO, even though I'm smarter than she is, because I just got hired yesterday, I'm in the cubicle. Don't discount what inspires you. That's coming from something. And actually, I believe it's touching something inside. It's coming from inside. It's an outside force that's actually triggering something inside. So what inspires you is very, very important, but it's not powerful enough to move your life. So the second question is, why is it important to you? Now that takes some reflection. You have to answer, I would love to be able to do country western music, but I have a horrible voice. I'm not really a good entertainer. I mean, it's not important to me. I might be inspired by it, but it's not important to me. Becoming an author, that's something I've wanted to do my whole life. I actually started writing a book when I was in my 30s called Raising a Champion, about my daughters, about how parents and children engage when the child has a chance to do some really great stuff. Yeah, I never finished that book. So it's always been there. And when I asked, why is it important to me this time, I had lots of reasons. And I write about those and I explain all this in my book. And what happens when I ask that second question, I invoke the first power, the power of priority. And I say, you know what? there's only so many things that you can do in your life. You may not know this. Your community may not know this. I learned it just recently. The word priorities is pretty new in language. It didn't used to exist. You couldn't have priorities. You can only have a priority. One thing. No multitasking. One thing. What is your priority? So when you answer that, you get rid of the things that aren't important to you, and you make time for the things that are. That's the power of priority. The second question invokes the second power also, and that's the power of the heart. Why is it important to you? You anchor this thing that you're not currently doing, but that you want to do. You're anchoring it to your heart. It's the mama bear power. I'll do anything for it. That's why devastation works. You'll do anything. So that's maybe mocking that devastation. That's the opposite. It's love. You're anchoring it to your heart, and that gives you the power of the heart. And then when you ask the third question, how will I bring it into my life? So it's not enough to do the first two. You have to, what am I going to do? How am I going to become an author? How am I going to become a country western? How am I going to become a CEO? How am I going to do whatever it is? And you start making a plan. The first thing I think you ought to do is go back to the second question, why is it important to me? And ask that of all the stuff that's taking your time up today. Because if you're like me, there's a lot of stuff that you're doing today that you're doing for reasons that maybe used to be good, maybe not even that. Maybe they were forced on you by somebody else. Maybe they were an obligation that you had at one time that no longer serves you. Maybe you could now afford to have your house clean when you couldn't before. And so look at all the stuff you're doing now and say, how does it serve me? And get rid of everything it doesn't, so you make space for your new thing. That's really important, and most people don't take that step, and it'll kill your dream. But so that now you plan, how am I going to do this thing? It gets on your calendar. You do research. Whatever it is, you start actually taking steps towards your dream, towards your goal, and that invokes the power of the universe. And that's the power of serendipity, the power of magical things happening to you that you never could have imagined in a million years would show up in your life. That's because you're engaged in the work, and work that is deeply ingrained in your spirit. There's a connection there between the universe and this thing that you discovered in your spirit, and it propels you along. So that's what I call the transformational process. You'll notice it has nothing to do with, airy fairy, or, I'm, Stuart Smalley, I'm smart, and it's none of that. It's just really practical living life, but it's getting your life in tuned with who you are. I think that's the real critical component of it.
Yeah, and it sounds like you really have to be willing to slow down to figure that out, because you can't really. We get so wrapped up in all those things that you're talking about, that whether they're good things or negative or not, we're so busy, and our brain is going so many miles an hour with everything that we're doing, that in order to even ask ourselves those questions and have an honest answer, we might be like, I don't know, I really have to think about this.
I don't have time for that.
Yeah, I don't have time for that. Yeah, exactly. So you really have to slow down. And it's funny, you were talking about earlier, like getting outside of things, and it literally, when I go outside and take walks, that's like when all my best ideas come to me. Or in the shower, of course, so you can't write them down. But it's like movement. It's like getting out and doing something, separating yourself from whatever's stressing you out, whatever work it is that you're doing. And I'll take a walk, and all of a sudden be like, oh my gosh, this would be so great for ... Right. Or I'd really like to incorporate this, or I'd really like to do this. And if I could spend my whole life walking, I would be absolutely brilliant. But no, I think that's really important to know. You have to ask yourself, but then you have to have the time to sit down and actually reflect on it as well.
Yeah.
Speaking of reflection time, you have a happy living lake house. Is that right? Coming up, or?
Yay.
Yeah. This is pretty cool. Is this in South Carolina? Is that right?
It's in North Carolina, just outside of Charlotte, on a beautiful lake called Lake Norman.
Super cool.
And the thing that I've loved about happy living is being able to, lift somebody, being able to give somebody a little kernel of something that they can apply to their life. It's incredibly fulfilling and awesome.
Mm.
But almost all of my work is done through electronic relationships. And so, when I go to conferences, like we went to Mindshare together, that was great. It was the community that was great. I went to another conference before Mindshare this year. It's called the World Domination Summit. Yeah, WDS. It's up in Portland. It's been 8 years it's been there now. And one of the things they do is they let the attendees host their own meetups, your own workshops.
Oh, wow.
And so last year, we've done it now for 3 years. We've hosted workshops. Last year, we hosted 5 of them. And we were trying to get out of a hotel because we were staying at a hotel, spending lots of money for meeting space and all that. And so we thought we'd do an Airbnb. And my son found this great skyrise place and perfect. We could get 25 people in there. It's awesome. We signed the contract. I read the contract after signing it, of course. And, you're not allowed to have parties. I mean, that's the whole purpose when we got 25 people streaming in there. So he let us out of the contract. And to make this long story short, we ended up renting a yacht, a 25-foot yacht on the river, the Willamette River, just outside, right in Portland. And so the people, when we're hosting our meetups, they were coming to meet us on this yacht.
Nice.
And it was great fun. And just getting people away from the conference, getting them in water is always amazing. And I live on this amazing lake already, so I know how awesome that is. So that was really a catalyst for me saying, what I want to do is find a place where we can just get together and we can do happy living things. And at first I thought about Airbnb, and we could do that. And there's a bunch of them on this lake. And in fact, our first planning session to buy the house was in an Airbnb with my staff or my team. And so we thought about that. But then I made the decision that I wanted to own it for lots of reasons. And I've got some money that's invested for my business life, as most of it's invested in the stock market. Stock market's been doing great. So I thought, what if I just diversified a little bit and I took about a third of it out and put it in real estate? That's probably just a smart move anyways. So in a sense, I really got the house for nothing.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And so that's what we're doing. And our idea is the original idea was to have a retreat. So you come in and I'll teach you about the transformational process and get you all fired up, and you'll go home and your life will be great. And then you'll send your friends, and that'd be a perfect model. And that's the traditional model. What we came up with when we experimented with it, when we had our team together, is, and I didn't come up with it, I like to come up with all the ideas because I haven't contained my ego yet, but it was my son and John Grant came up with this idea that what if we just had a guest star? So Kylene's going to be on my podcast next week. You have your own community of followers and like-minded people that you guys like to do the same things. So what if we had you as a guest star? And the house is so gorgeous, Kylene.
I'm in, whatever you're about to say.
I can't do it justice. This looks like it could be a loft kind of a space in New York City. It was designed by an architect in 2009. It is just gorgeous. And it's got a big 10-foot, I meant that to say it right, 10-foot by 10-foot window looking out from the kitchen and the dining area onto the lake. It's just gorgeous. And we're going to be able to configure it so we can have 9 private sleeping spaces.
Oh, that's nice.
Probably 6 queen beds that could be doubled up with couples or friends or whatever. And then probably 3 will be twin beds because we're making some spaces private. So we could have a guest star and then 8 of her or his followers, community members, family, whoever wants to come. And what we'll do is, of course, if it was TinyFitDiva, it'd probably have some food things and some health things, and maybe you do, whatever your shtick is, or maybe you have a book that we might send the book in advance to the people, so read the author's book before you come. So whatever it is, we'll do a little bit of that around the guest star. But mostly what we'll do, myself and my son and our friend John will be hosting all of you at our house for this awesome vacation, doing healthy things, being in nature, but mostly doing what we do on vacation with people who we know and love, is have nice, deep conversations about what's important in life. So that's what we're just now planning. We plan to roll out the 2019 calendar, hopefully with all of our guest stars signed up before the year is done. I would love to have you as a guest star. If you would like to, we can talk about it afterwards.
That would be a blast.
And then in addition to that, so we're going to do maybe 5, 6, 7 events, whatever. But then the house is going to be perfect for people and folks like you and me that would just like to have a space for themselves for a week. So that's going to be available. And then when those two things aren't happening, it'll be available to all of you out there to rent for yourselves just for a vacation rental. That's going to be great.
So cool. I love that. I didn't even know about that area, but that's like, I'm trying to think. Do you know how close that is to Greensboro?
Oh, yeah, Greensboro is, I think, maybe 3 hours or so.
3 hours? Okay.
towards the water. Our house, both of my houses, actually, they're in different directions, but both of them are about 40 minutes from the airport. So you could take a Lyft or an Uber, and you'd be there in 40 minutes. So the guest stars, all they have to do, or the guests, just have to get to Charlotte. If you're not in the area, if you can't drive, get to Charlotte, take an Uber up, and then we're thinking about $250 or $300 a night, but it'll be all inclusive. So when you come, you don't have to bring your wallet around. We're going to take care of you just like you're over at our house for a vacation, and we're going to be hanging out with a cool person.
That is like too perfect. I think that's such a brilliant idea. You are going to have so much fun next year.
That's going to be fun.
That's so cool.
And more importantly, we're going to be making deeper relationships.
Yeah. More
meaningful relationships. And that's what I'm really most excited to see what is going to come out of that, because some great stuff is going to come out of this.
Yeah. I mean, when you're talking about happy living and you're talking about the pillars of health, I mean, community and relationships is such a huge, huge, huge part of that. And I mean, that only helps you get better in business too, with networking and all of that, but it's like it's your insides. You're talking about spirit and your life purpose and things like that. And we are built, we are designed to be in community with other people. Like we are supposed to be in relationship with other people. So that's amazing. I love that. Good for you. That's wildly exciting.
Thank you. And what we're going to try to do between now and then is we want to get that thing set up in a way that when you go there, it's going to be the best 3 or 4 or 5 days that you've ever had. And you're going to want to come back to events, and you're going to want to tell your family and friends, I found a place that we can go have a vacation on the lake. Yeah. It's a beautiful lake. And
it's so perfect. I don't know about other people, but to me, the lake equals total relaxation. And there's not that many places you can go, at least where I'm from. And so to have like this place that you just hop on an airplane, you can get there in 40 minutes when you land. That's so perfect. That's really exciting. So I know you're a very structured person, you're a process-oriented person. So do you have certain habits during your day that you do consistently that make you feel productive, or maybe some health habits that you have consistently?
Yes, and they change over the course of my life. They've changed quite a bit. But every morning I read, and actually for the last 7 years, I've been reading the exact same book over and over and over and over again. It's called Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life by Dr. Wayne Dyer. And it's a book about the Tao Te Ching, a philosophy written by Lao Tzu 2,500 years ago in China. And it's just 87, it's a short, 81 verses, I think, 81 verses. So you get an interpretation from Lao Tzu. It's about living living life well, living life properly. And then Dr. Dyer writes an essay about what that means to him and how you apply it in today's world. So I got that when I turned 50. My wife had seen him speak and recommended the book, and I bought it. And I read a verse every day, and I was so confused by what the hell I was reading. The Tao is pretty crazy. It's hard to get every time, and his explanation helps quite a bit. But anyways, I read it 81 days in a row. I thought, I got to go do this again. But this time I'm going to read one verse every day for a week, and then try to apply that to my life. And that's been a real big inspiration on me, trying to unlearn life and trying to do my giving back. I have to give a lot of that to that book. So I read, and then I try to read other books as well, but I do that every day. I also try to just be available. I hang out downstairs because my daughters are going to school. So I just try to be available to them during that time. They're 12 and 15, so it doesn't work that well.
Sometimes it's just being in the house, right?
Yeah,
you're available.
So I do that. And then I go to work, and this is working. But what I've started doing is I always get my steps in. So I got my Fitbit on.
Yes.
I get 10,000 every day for sure. I try to get more than that. And I also try to do that every hour, get up and move.
That's a nice little feature they've added. That's very helpful. It's like, hey, you got 20 more steps to hit your goal or whatever it is.
Yeah. So we have a pretty big property. I take my dog. I say, let's go up the hill, and it's I can go out and get about a half a mile, two laps up the hill. So mostly I can just hang out here, and then I also try to do something with strength. When you get to be my age, 57 now, it's one of the biggest, most important things for your bone health is to keep lifting. So I do push-ups. I'm teaching myself how to climb a rope. So I've got a 30-foot rope in my backyard.
I love it.
Way up there. It has a bell at the top. And so I started climbing it 2 years ago, and I hurt my elbow. So I'm learning the proper technique, and so I'm doing that, and I'm doing pull-ups. So I try to do something with strength every 2 or 3 times a week. And also, anybody who's my age, or if you're not my age, as you get to be my age, what I've learned is I'm really slowing down my exercise and the amount of time that I'm spending exercising. So, and I have more energy from it. I'm staying I look like I'm in the same shape. I don't know if I am, but I feel better. Yep. And so I think part of this life journey is making sure the things you're doing are appropriate for the stage of life that you're in. And that they do change, believe me. Yep. It changes. So I try to exercise. I try to eat well. I eat 2 times a day only. I do lunch and dinner. So I got that semi-fasting thing going on. And actually today is my 106th straight monthly 36-hour fast and cleanse. So once a month, I do a pure fast and cleanse. I drink coffee. I cheat on that. I'm not sure if it's cheating. It just depends on the rules or what you read late.
Right.
I have bone
Everybody's
broth.
version is different. Yep.
Yeah, I have bone broth in here right now, and no food, no alcohol. And what I took away when I started doing this is just giving your digestive system a break. Once in a while is really good for you.
So, and you feel good from it.
Yeah, and be honest, it hasn't been really hard for me. I don't look forward to doing it, and mostly because I have to give up my wine and beer at night. That's really the thing. But I think that's really a good discipline for me also to give it up at least once a month.
Yeah, I was just thinking earlier, our bodies, it's so beneficial to do things cyclically sometimes. I mean, even with coffee is a great example. With if you can give it up for like maybe a week at a time occasionally, you're going to respond better to it when you do drink it.
Yeah.
Our bodies can just adapt so quickly to things that we get in these habits. Yeah. So taking things out periodically and then bringing it back in, listening to your body, seeing how it responds, all of that's awesome.
Yeah.
Good for you, 36 hours. I don't know if I could do it. I don't know.
Well, you got me in the middle of it, so I'm not cranky yet. I don't get it. It's really not that big a deal. I think it's good for you. So
yeah, For
The other
sure.
thing I do that I'd really recommend is, and I know you're a fan of, but I do my blood work twice a year.
Good for you.
And really try to
Yes.
monitor. That's a really good indicator. You can learn a lot of stuff from your blood work, and you can also head off if things start going south in one way or another. You can head it off that way. So those
Yeah,
are some of the
absolutely.
things that I do.
That's awesome. Well, let's do a couple rapid fire questions for you.
Yes, ma'am.
Besides beer and wine, what's your favorite snack?
My favorite snack.
Actually, you just said you don't snack, so that might be a horrible question for you.
So I had grapes last night. I don't eat any sugar, so sometimes I get a craving for fruit, or might be a granola or something like that.
You know, if you get a really ripe bag of grapes, those things are amazing. I mean, it is nature's candy in your mouth. I mean, it's so good. It's so good. And same at kiwi. I've had some kiwi recently, and if they are really ripe, if they're, I mean, it's just the sweetest thing you'll ever taste. Yeah, that's a good.
And I gave up sugar a long time ago, so I pretty much don't have any processed sugar, and mostly not sugar at all. And so now the fruit is just so much more delicious.
Oh, it changes your whole taste. Yeah,
Yes.
100%. So other than Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, what are some books you're reading now, or top books that you've enjoyed?
Big influencer of me was Good to Great, a business book. I really recommend that. What am I just reading recently?
I'm gonna put you on the spot. I didn't prep.
I'm going blank, but there's my library.
I love it.
See there. I could just turn around and throw a lot of books at you.
Right.
An old one I read a long time ago. I don't read novels much. It's called Goat Brothers, and it was really, really an interesting, fun book to read. So there's two.
Awesome. And so you already shared about the lake house. So what is one of your biggest dreams, goals? I mean, is that it for you right now, or do you have some other things that you're just like really excited about the next couple of years?
You know, I think when I came up with this idea for Happy Living, this is from a business standpoint. I want to be, my final masterpiece. I want this to do what our mission is, which is to help improve the health and well-being of the world, which is a great big old goal, but one person at a time. So honestly, if I could change, I wrote about in my book, the last personal chapter is about my legacy, and it's a Viking funeral. And I wrote all about this. And basically what it says, if in my death, I could change one life from reading my book or listening to a podcast or anything that I've left in my content from being in Happy Living, if that could help just one person, what an awesome legacy it'd be. And if it can help hundreds or thousands or millions, that'd just be too good to believe.
I love that goal. That's exciting. So where can people connect with you, buy your books? Are you on social media? What's your website?
We're happyliving.com is our website. We're Very Happy Living on Facebook and Twitter. And I'm Matt Gersper everywhere. Just Matt Gersper. And www.happyliving.com is where to find us.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt, so much for just everything that you're doing with Happy Living. I think it's just amazing. Your whole goal to inspire people and to help them live happier lives. It's just one of the coolest things you can do. So thank you for being here and talking about it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, Kylene.